Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. We've been looking at numbers and comparing numbers, trying to figure out which is larger, which is smaller. We've been placing things on number lines. We've been having some math talks where we talk about the size of numbers and where they might go on number lines. And we've also been looking at very specifically how you can identify what is a larger number, what is a smaller number. We talked about these symbols, that this symbol means greater than, this symbol means less than, this symbol means equal to. So you might say, in this one, the first number is larger than the second number. In number 2, the first number is less than the second number. And in number 3, both numbers are equal. We talked about a way you can compare numbers. You have to start with place values. You have to start with the largest place value. So for example, you'll start by comparing the whole numbers. And in this particular example, the whole number 4 is greater than the whole number 3. So that's it. You're done. The first number is greater than the second number. But if they're not the same, if they are the same, then you would compare the tenths place. So take a look at this one. Both whole numbers are the same. So you have to go and compare the tenths. This number has 8 tenths, this number has 4 tenths. So the first number is greater than the second number. And if the tenths were the same, then you would compare the hundredths. If the hundredths that were the same, you compare the thousandths. And you keep comparing until you get a place value that's different. Let's look at some of the examples we did. In number 1, we have 2 and 37 thousandths and 2 and 1 tenth. Well, you compare the whole numbers. They're the same. You compare the tenths, and they're different. We have 1 tenth and 0 tenths, which means the second number is larger. And we'd say that 2 and 37 thousandths is less than 2 and 1 tenth. Now, building on what we did before, you could also add zeros on to the 2 and 1 tenth, and then you'd be able to see that 100 thousandths is greater than 37 thousandths. So using those zeros and decimals idea helps as well. Number 2, we have 2 numbers. The whole number parts are the same. So move to the tenths. The tenths parts are the same. So move to the hundredths. This one has 2 hundredths, this has 3 hundredths. So that means the second number is larger. And we could also add a 0 on and compare that. You can see that this is bigger than that. Number 3, we have 25 thousandths, we have 3 hundredths. We'll compare the whole numbers. They're the same. Compare the tenths. They're the same. Compare the hundredths. This one has 2 hundredths, this one has 3 hundredths. This one will be the larger number because it has more hundredths. If you want, you can make them with the same number of decimal spots. And you'll see that 30 hundredths or 30 thousandths is greater than 25 thousandths. Okay, and the last one from this set, you can see that we have the same whole number 88, the same number of tenths, the same number of hundredths. So remember, we can add zeros on the end of decimals and it doesn't change their value. By doing that, we can see that these are both equal. All right, so it's a matter of breaking it down to the individual place values, going slowly, picking each place value apart. So look at this one here, number 5. We have 1 whole and we have 0 wholes. So even though this number has all sorts of digits, 1 whole is greater than 98,765 100 thousandths because this number is less than, this number is less than 1 whole. Remember, just got to compare those individual place values. See, in this one, at first glance, it looks like, well, this has more digits, it has to be larger. But compare the individual place values. 0 1, 0 1s. 8 tenths, 7 tenths. This one is larger. And if you wanted, You could add zeros onto 8/10 and you would see more clearly that this one is larger than this one. Okay, and then number 7. Again, you got to compare each place value. 0 ones, 0 ones. 6/10, 6/10. 7/100, 7/100. 5/1000, 6/1000. Once we have one that's the same, we can determine that this one is larger. And if it helps, put a 0 on. And you can see that these 4 digits are greater than these 4. And the last one from this set, same thing, compare your individual place values. 5 holes, 5 holes. 4/10, 5/10. It's the tenths, or pardon me, 4/10, 5/10. It's the 10th spot that's telling us that the second number is larger. That's comparing and ordering numbers. Now, we did one other kind of question where we had to put a bunch in order. Okay, so we had to put a bunch of these in order from smallest to largest. Okay, so first of all, compare the whole numbers. 7, 7, 7, 7. 0, 7, 7. Okay, well, very clearly, this one is the smallest number. It's 0. It's the smallest by a lot. 745 thousandths. Okay, let's cross that one out. Okay, now let's compare the tenths. 6/10, 6/10. 5/10, 5/10. 1/10. 9/10. So 1/10 here is the next smallest, 7 and 1,212 10,000ths. Okay. Now let's compare our hundredths. Well, we have 6/10, 6/10, 5/10, 5/10, and 9/10. These two have to be the next smallest ones. This one has 5/10, this one has 5/10, this has no hundredths, this has 4 hundredths. So this one is the next smallest, 7 and 5/10. And then this one, 7 and 541 thousandths, will come next. Okay, now we have 6/10, 6/10, 9/10. So these two have to come next. 6/10, 6/10, no hundredths, 4 hundredths. So 7 and 6/10 comes next. 7 and 64 hundredths comes next. 7 and 9/10 is the largest number out of this group. So again, comparing the individual place values starting with the whole numbers. This is the smallest number of the group. This is the largest. So the students have an assignment on this today on comparing and ordering numbers, and I hope this video helps. That's all for now. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.